Lady yields back. I now recognize Mr. Hice for his opening statement. Mr. Hice. Mr. Hice for his opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill is not the answer to voting rights in D.C. If D.C. were to become a state, the founding fathers recognized that it would be the first among states, and that is because the district where our federal government resides would be reliant upon the surrounding state, in this case D.C., for basic things like security, sewage, water, and a host of other needs. It would require foreign governments to negotiate with that state for embassies and other international matters. And quite frankly, the founding fathers wanted none of this. They wanted Congress to have oversight over the district, something that Congress must retain to protect federal interest. And it has worked for over 230 years. In fact, it's worked well. It's our duty as representatives for all Americans that we safeguard their capital. But that's not good enough for progressives on the left, which leads me to some of the major practical problems with this bill. First of all, it's written to maximize the benefit of the new state of D.C. while burdening the American taxpayer. The lines, for example, of this newly envisioned state of D.C. are completely gerrymandered to maximize tax revenue. They do not include some of the federal property contiguous with the map, but they do include others. Well, why did they do this? Well, the answer is simple. It's all about money. D.C. wants to become a state so it can levy taxes on people who are working in D.C. So this means if you live in Maryland or Virginia or West Virginia, Pennsylvania, or wherever, but you work in D.C., your taxes are likely to go way up. This is going to result in stolen tax revenue from those states and potentially cripple their economies and their budgets. So that every time an American comes to Washington for spring break, for vacations or whatever, and they cross one of the iconic bridges coming from the airport, they're likely going to be paid. Oh, but it gets worse even. D.C. currently relies on hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funding each year. The last time D.C. had full responsibility for its budget, the federal government had to step in and rescue D.C. from financial ruin. Currently, the federal government pays for the court system in D.C. That's right, 1/3 of D.C.'s entire government is paid by the American taxpayers. D.C. also currently doesn't have a prison. The federal government pays for thousands of D.C. prisoners in the federal system to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars every year. But D.C. doesn't want to build a prison. For decades, the district has rejected a federally funded prison because D.C. officials, including our own colleague Eleanor Holmes Norton, have said the city is too small for a prison. So under this bill, the federal government would continue to pay for those prisoners to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars each year. D.C. wants to continue to receive their special benefits for schools, for colleges, for roads, billions of dollars in federal funds, in pensions, things that none of the other states get. We asked the district government for plans to pay for the likely major budget shortfalls if it were to become a state. Not surprisingly, they didn't provide any answers. Why not? Well, because they expect the federal government to continue funding it in a way that it has for the past 25 years. So under this bill, not only would D.C. become a state, but it would be the only state in the entire country to have the federal government pick up billions and billions of annual dollars in expenses each year. In other words, anybody supporting this bill as it is written is basically saying to their constituents that we think the people living in D.C. are entitled to more benefits than you are. D.C. wants the benefits of a state without actually having to operate like one. They want to be treated differently. They want to be treated better than all other states. DC wants to keep all these special perks plus gain 2 more Democratic U.S. senators. This would effectively shift the power to the left-wing progressives so that they can enact their radical agenda that Americans have rejected time and again. Under this bill, DC would in fact become the first among states, which is exactly what our founders sought to avoid. DC would be the only state without an airport, without a car dealership, without a capital city, without a landfill, without even a name on its own, and we could go on and on and on. But who would be left to provide all these services while it continues to receive billions of dollars for special programs? Well, we know the answer to that. The American people would. DC statehood would mean a money grab from neighboring states and a power grab for the United States Senate, all done in an impractical and unconstitutional fashion. I yield back.